I went from one-man show, year one, 12 deals, and then the following year we did 52 deals. Yeah.
Almost 500% growth in 1 year. That's incredible. That's got to be inspiring.
The psychology of an inbound lead is way different than outbound, right? That was like the biggest mistake you can ever do.
Today, I'm super excited about our guest, the one and only Alex Saenz. He started wholesaling at 18 years old. By 22, he made his first $1 million in real estate. He's done over 600 transactions. He's known in our industry as one of the top marketers and branders. He's an absolute genius in those areas. So Alex, brother, super excited to have you on here today. Thank you for coming on and sharing your time with us.
Let's go. Yeah, I appreciate the warm welcome, and to everybody on the call. It's a pleasure to be here, and I absolutely love this community, so it's awesome just to be around other like-minded people today. Thanks, Robert.
Amazing. So I wish I started at 18. If I could go back in time and tell like 18-year-old me, like, hey, just skip college and start real estate, like that would have been the best cheat code. You know, a lot of people don't get started until their 30s or 40s. How did you get in at 18 years old?
Yeah, I think number one, God led me to it, but the more detailed story is one of my best friends in high school. He closed his first deal in high school, like
Wow.
2 months before we graduated. His name is Jalen White. He closed a $13,000 deal, and he took me to the property. He was like in a very ghetto, rundown area here in Phoenix. I still, to this day, believe he took me to the property because he was scared to go by himself, right? But so we go walk it, and then I saw that deal just happen in high school, and I saw him show me the wire, right? I'm sure like everybody here, I thought it would happen for me in like 2 weeks, and that was not the case. I mean, 18 years old, I graduated with a 4.2, and I had tons of scholarships, and I just let them all go to pursue real estate because the proof of concept was there. And I knew that it wasn't a matter of it not working. The concept that was broken was me and my knowledge and what I had to do, right? So I knew it was real. But yeah, it took me 9 months to get my first deal. From then on, I mean, I was living at my buddy's house. My parents had just divorced. I living at a $5,000 trailer home in Phoenix. And, I went from negative $200 to $13,000 in the bank, and I just did not squander the opportunity. I was not going to go back to the trailer home.
It's that aha moment, because it's one thing to hear about it on YouTube or see it on Instagram and see the guys that have already made it, but when you see someone that's also the same age as you do it A to Z and see that wire hit, that's incredible. That's got to be inspiring. How long was it before when you walked that property with your friend and when you actually got your first deal?
It was a total of 9 months. In those 9 months, I put out over 500 bandit signs. This always makes me laugh. I was door knocking foreclosed homes because I thought that was the lead. Foreclosed, like past foreclosure. So I'm like, why is nobody answering? Why are all these houses vacant, right? But I did everything wrong. But my first day was driving for dollars. I just saw a vacant house, and it was like January 3rd of 2016. I have a studio I'm living in, $700, no money, and I had a $5,000 deal closing. That one fell apart. Mom had cancer, let that go. And then 10 days later, I closed a deal for $13,000. And it changed my life forever.
You're 18 years old. You just made the most amount of money you've ever made in your life. What's going through your mind at that time?
I definitely felt rich at that point. But then I didn't get another deal for another 2 months. So it just brought back all that fear, and that fear of like starting over. And I think as entrepreneurs and business owners, I don't think that feeling ever goes away. Like, you don't wake up one day and feel like it's not all going to be gone. Or even now, having established businesses in different industries, I still feel like for some reason, like it could all be gone. And I realize that's a gift. Like, that's what keeps me going.
I have that fear all the time. Like, what if it all goes to zero tomorrow? Like, that's what keeps us up at night. But you know what? At the end of the day, if we went back to zero with the knowledge that we have, you can't take the knowledge away. When I get those thoughts coming into my head, like, what if it all goes to zero? Just got to remember, no. I know how to do it. And I think that, with your skill sets, like, be right back in it, cranking out deals in a few days.
I second that for sure. Really did it from the beginning is I paid $5,000 for a mastermind, like right away. I invested pretty immediately into education, and I've been able to compound hundreds of thousands of dollars into education now, masterminds, events. But my first mastermind, it was like month 5 from the time I got my first deal. So that really scaled it off. I learned all these things at the mastermind, but I came back to it and I just felt extremely overwhelmed. I'm like, what do I even implement? My goal, because I was in survival for so long, especially with my parents, living at a trailer home, like struggling for years and years. I just wanted to play basketball all day and do deals. I was happy with one deal a month. But then I looked around, I'm like, man, like I'm enjoying life, but like, my dad's still grinding his ass off in the sun. My mom's struggling, like my best friends are struggling, like my siblings are struggling. So that's what led me to start really scaling and going to events and furthering my knowledge in the business. Eventually, I went from one man show year one, 12 deals, and then the following year we did 52 deals, and they were all in Phoenix. Wow. So yeah,
almost 500% growth in 1 year. So year two, you're 19. There's no way you did 55 deals and 19 on your own. What were some of the challenges that you had that second year?
A few things, like I looked at marketing as an expense. I really did, versus an investment. That was like my biggest hurdle. Like when I was, paying those invoices, I mean, it wasn't even that much when I look back at it, but that really hindered my growth for sure, because I was just scared to spend more on marketing. Leading people, I mean, I'm 19. I was like a high school football captain, but some of it translates to business, but I had to kind of go through that learning process. And then because I hired friends and family, it was having that boundary of direction or instruction versus suggestion, right? So like, I would say something, and because we're great friends, it would be taken as a suggestion, when really, the hierarchy was more of a, hey, I'm giving you these directions. I think the biggest breakthrough was like, okay, can I make $1 million a year with Bandit Saenz? And the answer was yes, but I'm like, the thought of that alone just, I mean, oh my God, it crippled my mind, right? And then I'm like, okay, how many doors do I have to knock to make $1 million? I'm like, I won't have any knuckles by the time I finish that. So then that led me to scalable marketing strategies, Google Ads and cold calling. That was like my go-to. And I didn't really start Google Ads until like year 3. That's when we hit the $1 million mark. But year 2 was just straight cold calling.
You eventually ended up working very close with, Carlos Reyes and Sal Shakir, which obviously are the three of you guys are very well known for running All In. What did that progression look like from when you guys met really early on at this event to eventually ended up working together and building All In together?
Yeah, so we had lunch like 2 days before we went to that mastermind, and then we really connected at that mastermind. And at that point, we're doing deals. A day out of the week, I would go and make calls with them and, disposition deals or whatever we're doing that day. We ended up getting an office together, and the synergy was just amazing, right? And then the culture was great. And that, that led to us collabing and masterminding internally a lot more. So, I mean, the power of a mastermind is incredible, right? So like we were able to, they took off immediately, right? And I'm looking at it like, okay, I know what they're doing, but there's something holding me back. And that one thing was the fear of spending on marketing. They were not afraid to spend on marketing, and that's one of the biggest things I learned from them. And then they scaled their business like instantaneously, and I'm like lagging behind it, but I'm doing, 600 grand, they're doing over $1 million. So I'm on track. And that led to a lot of people asking us what we were doing. And we were at that point, we were going to like an event together, a mastermind, like once a quarter. So we went to this mastermind in San Francisco with a bunch of the OGs. Yeah, Joe Taylor and Justin Boozy and a bunch of different guys. But we went there and, we're presenting, and we kind of came back a little dissatisfied. And Carlos brought it up. He's like, why don't we just do something ourselves? Right. And that was the first event we all collectively collabed on, and we just posted on Facebook, and we had 50, 60 people at 5K each, and we sold out our first event just organically, because during that time we're just posting our results, like, hey, just these are the KPIs for this month, this is what we closed this month. And that real social proof hit a lot of people, and we're pretty ahead of it on like the cold calling, skip tracing side of things, SMS, and then I mean, not very early on to Google Ads, but before it was like almost mainstream now. That event just crushed, and it was a momentum, all in momentum. Last year, which you were here for,
I was there.
1,300, 1,400 people here. So we were all able to collectively do great things together. So it's been quite the journey there. I think the biggest thing is just the all-in tree, right? It's undeniable.
Now I want to dive into marketing a little bit. I always say there's only 2 numbers that matter in this business: return on ad spend and cash conversion cycle. When you plug a dollar into marketing, how many dollars you get back and how fast do you do that? Was it just being in that same office with Carlos and Sal and seeing them like grow a little bit faster than you that first year working together that really drove that aha moment?
No, definitely. I mean, That's a huge percentage of it, just a proof of concept. But then it's also learning curves. Like I remember my first pay-per-click campaign, spent 140 grand on it, and like we broke even that year. And I'm like doing the same thing, but why doesn't that work for me? Number one, we were treating every lead like a cold call lead. That was like the biggest mistake you can ever do. The psychology of an inbound lead is way different than outbound, right? You're chasing, you're following up on cold call leads. When it comes to inbound leads, like they're calling you, right? Like you have to be much more stern and firm on getting that contract like immediately. And once we were able to make that shift, we relaunched our Google ads, and that's when we scaled past $1 million. We just had a rule of if any inbound lead that came in, I mean, if it wasn't touched in the first 10 minutes, there's a problem, right? We would be more aggressive on offers and contracts with those leads. And then with cold calling, you could be just more of a follow-up passive almost sometimes. We were so aggressive, but that was the biggest thing.
Now, the other thing that you really touched on too is like the sales process. Is there anything else that you do in that sales process with an inbound lead that's different than you do if it's a cold call lead?
The first thing is contact, right? So some of the things we would do to improve that connectivity, we would skip trace every lead from the get-go. That was like mandatory, right? So that would improve all communication, because none of your competitors are calling the wife's phone and getting in contact. That would improve the connectivity with leads, therefore improving, your offers, right?
So let's say you had an inbound lead from Johnny. You called Johnny, he doesn't answer. Then you skip trace to find his wife, Susie, and call his wife
Yes.
right away.
Yeah.
I like that.
We pull the whole profile. Yeah. We made sure that we gave a verbal range offer on every call. And range offers, they left the door open for negotiation, right? So it's like, hey, your home qualifies for an offer between 160 to 180,000. And I mean, we had so many sellers be like, I'd probably have to be like 165, 170. Bam, get the contract, right? So verbal ranges really worked well, because I found that when you give a firm offer, you kind of close the door on negotiating. And at the end of the day, like you want them to feel like they're in charge of like the numbers.
Now, let's talk about branding. What do you think people are screwing up on branding today? What do you see
Yeah.
wholesalers screwing up on?
Number one is definitely probably their brand name, right? I've seen 4 or 5 word names, and although it may feel warm and fuzzy to you as a consumer, it's pretty hard to remember, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of, 2 to 3 word names, right? Like one of our brands is 4-word, 5-word brand name. Like, first of all, it's hard for them to remember, but it's just too confusing for the consumer. They want something to be able to digest it a little easier. So if you have some Fiverr logo, like, spend a few $100s on a really quality logo. Website, initially I was on like Carrot to begin with, but I want to own my website, right? So that was one thing that I've been pretty adamant about over the years, is owning your website, owning your rights, owning your trademark. Like that helps on branding.
I've gone on some people's websites and they have acquisitions and dispos, like buy a house, sell a house, both on the same website. I'm like, oh, it's a horrible idea. Customer demographic is completely different. If you're going to put Google retargeting pixels and Facebook retargeting pixels, it's going to screw up all your retargeting audiences. You got to have 2 brands, one for your buyers, one for your sellers, 100%.
Yeah. One thing I'll add too is initially I was sending a lot of traffic to like a website, and I learned the hard way with conversion rates. Make sure you're sending your traffic to like squeeze pages, landing pages. When somebody clicks on your ad, you want them doing 2 things really: submitting a web form or calling, right? You don't want them going through, all the other tabs that you have on your website. That just confuses it. And then you'll lose conversion rates over that.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think are some of the biggest bottlenecks with scaling?
I would say one is the marketing. But just because you increase the marketing doesn't mean it's going to be fixed. It's a combination of marketing and team, right? Because I've been at the point where, I scale my cold calling or whatever marketing it was, I'm getting, 80 leads a day. And at one point, I mean, we're getting 100 leads with the callers and the PPC, but my team was not ready or had the capacity for that. So you have to push the marketing, increase the capacity with the team. What we found in a lot of businesses was they always had a bottleneck on either or. Either they had too many people, not enough leads, or too many leads, not enough people. And then leveraging the right tools and systems. I mean, when we signed up for Investorlift, I mean, I saw that as like 2 acquisition managers, maybe 3. You know, it's like 120 grand in payroll a year. Like
Yeah.
that's how I justified the value in my mind. The value exceeded my expectation, but
Good. Happy to hear that. That puts a smile on my face.
yeah, but leveraging the right tools and systems, and sometimes we want to do it the hard way.
Obviously, when a lead comes in, you're going to make a certain number of contact attempts. And eventually, if you can't make contact, you're throwing it into a drip. How much time would you spend trying to activate a lead before you just throw it into a drip?
We were pretty aggressive with it. I mean, we'd call them 50, 60 times. Like
Per lead.
yeah,
Wow.
I mean, you know, within context, right, on the details of the lead. We did a 97K assignment fee here in Tempe, Arizona, and that one of those leads we called 66, 65 times. And on the 65th time, Andy had left so many voicemails and texts that he's like, the seller just answers, "Hey, Andy, I'm ready to sell now." Yeah, some of the best deals are the follow-up.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. I'm doing the same thing on my sales team. We had 600 untouched leads. Now, as you're scaling these up, a big part is recruiting and training. Can you share with us what your process was to find these salespeople, number one, and number two, to train them and get them up to speed where they're closing at a good rate?
Yeah, so really good onboarding processes. I mean, we created those over the years, but that's essential. In the beginning, we had a 21-day onboarding process for like an acquisition manager, and that got condensed down to 5 days, right? And a lot of that was more in-depth recruiting, slow to hire, fast to fire. So that was our concept. We'd always be interviewing weekly. We keep a pipeline of sellers, but we don't keep a pipeline of talent. So that's something we did. We'd have candidates that we talked to in the past or that we can plug and play.
I love that. That's a key insight there, guys. Last time we spoke, you took a step back from wholesaling for a little bit to go pursue a big goal outside of real estate, aviation related. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in aviation.
Yeah, so I had a friendship with the guy, and I always knew he was in aviation, and he presented me an opportunity to, well, first come and take over the sales of the company, but then that led to offering me to buy the company. I saw the P&Ls, I saw the tax returns, so I'm like, okay, let me, really think about this. So I sold off a good chunk of my real estate portfolio, and I pursued this opportunity and bought 6 broken down helicopters and 50,000 different types of parts in the aviation space. As entrepreneurs, like, we're always looking for, the next big thing, right? And sometimes that comes to bite us, and sometimes that really works. So the way I looked at aviation, there's only 2 ways I can learn aviation on my own. It's 1, become a mechanic, or 2, become a pilot. Because there's really no entrepreneur course on how to be an aviation business owner. So I just saw that as the opportunity. That was like the main selling point. And that led to me, putting $700K down as a deposit, and then I fully bought them out in February. Yeah, it's been quite the process, but I know the runway, pun intended, on the aviation in 5-10 years it's going to be amazing. So, now going back to my main thing, which was always real estate. So glad to be fully back. And to your point earlier, you said like the knowledge. I made an intentional decision to pause it, and even my real estate team helped me tremendously on the aviation side. But just turning it back on in the last, since closed Olympics, 15 deals back in the pipeline. Multi 6 figures and potential profits, and some assigned, some waiting for specific things, and we can turn it on really fast. Like, this business is great.
Thank you, Alex, so much for coming on here today. We got to celebrate once you break 1,000. That'll be a big achievement.
Yeah, give me 2 years. We're ramping
2 years
up big, or less.
2 years. Let's do it. We got to do a Dubai trip. Go celebrate 1,000 deals.
Let's do it. And they'll all be sold on Investorlift.
Hell yeah. Thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. Well, thank you guys so much for jumping on. Enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon and your weekend. And we'll see you same time next week.